The rumors concerning a possible trade involving Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars continue. We have a special crossover segment with Joey Erickson of Locked On Stars to talk about what Robertson brings to the table and what it'll take to get him if the Islanders want to make that trade. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today. We've got a busy show. Again, Joey Erickson of Locked On Stars joins us to talk more about Jason Robertson and the possibility of a trade between the Islanders and the Stars. We'll talk a little bit about something Matthew Schaefer said about the Islanders organization at the Combine and at the last Stanley Cup game. And we will continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders with Grant Hutton. So plenty to get to on today's show. And without further ado, let's do our crossover segment with Joey Erickson.
Today, we have a special guest from Locked On Islanders. It is Gil Martin. I've talked with Gil a few times on the Locked On NHL show podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Go check out that as well. But now Gil's kind of hopping on here of Locked On Stars, doing a little crossover edition. First off, Gil, how are you today, good sir?
I am good. It is good to talk to you. And, I did an episode on a possible Robertson trade. I definitely wanted to get your input and, what you think the Stars would be looking for, maybe get a little more background information about him. And, great to do this.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested just because I am of the belief that the Stars should not get rid of Jason Robertson, but every single day now, it feels like we keep hearing more and more reports that he's being shopped. The Stars are trying to look at some cap space and to maybe re-sign Kyle Granlund, maybe to just re-sign any of these other unrestricted free agents they have. So I'm curious, just from a New York Islanders perspective, what makes Jason Robertson, I guess, a hot commodity, and what do you think that looks like for New York? Maybe the package, or what players are you willing maybe to give up to add a player like Jason Robertson?
Well, first, the Islanders need to get younger, faster, and more skilled. And I think he would check almost all of those boxes, if not all of them. They need goal scoring. They were 27th in the league or something like that in goals scored last year. So obviously you want to increase the offensive production, and he can certainly do that. The Islanders also need a change in culture a little bit. Mm-hmm. They've been sort of stuck in the muddy middle for far too long. And I think a player like Robertson, he wouldn't just impact you in the short run, but he's 25. So, he's just in his prime now. He has 1 year left on this contract. You sign him to an extension. You've got him, through his mid-30s, and that's probably what you would want to do.
Yeah, and I think he would basically hit the nail on the head for a lot of those boxes that you mentioned. Maybe he can check, and he's young too. And I think he's a really underrated defensive forward too. I think he's grown a lot in that aspect as well. We know he can score. He's 30 plus goals the last 3 seasons, but he has an underrated defensive aspect of his game. He's willing to defend, and sometimes that's all you really need out of like really elite goal scorers and players with that talent. As long as they're willing to defend and give an effort on the defensive side of the puck, that will certainly help. Now, from a Stars perspective, just looking at the Islanders roster, if Dallas is to consider this, like I'm looking at a player, and I know this is a steep price, but I'm looking at somebody like Noah Dobson, who is a right shot defenseman that could pair alongside Miro Heiskanen. And I know he's a number one guy, But if I'm Dallas, if I'm going to give up Jason Robertson, I need a really, really solid player in return. I think he would fit in Dallas really nice. Of course, you're going to have to sign him, so you may have to add like a Matt Dumba to this trade to gather some cap space if you're going to sign somebody like Dobson, because he's going to warrant quite a bit of money, and you're already paying Miro Heiskanen 8.45 for the next $7 million or the next 7 years. So Dobson's going to want somewhere, I would think, in that range. So is Dobson somebody that's a no-go for you if you're an Islanders fan? Or what players are you willing to give up in order to get Robo?
It's interesting because if you ask 10 Islander fans, you'll probably get a fairly evenly divided group of people. I have concerns about Dobson. Offensively, even though he had a little bit of an off year this past season, and it wasn't all his fault because so many injuries hit the Islanders and they aren't a great offensive team to begin with, but defensively, he's a liability. Like, I could see Noah Dobson going to Dallas and, getting 60 assists in his sleep with the talent that Dallas has up front. So I think he could be a really good addition. But the thing is, as you alluded to, he's going to ask for $9.5 million a year. If you do the trade, you could even do an 8-year deal with him rather than a 7. And I'm sure things could be arranged where, you allow the negotiations to take place before you finalize the deal. So, you don't sign the deal right away, but it's in place. And then shortly after the trade is made, the deal gets announced as far as a new contract, because he is an RFA with arbitration rights right now. So half the fans are like, you don't trade away a 70-point right shot defenseman under any circumstances. And half the fans are like, boy, he is really inconsistent in his own zone. If we can get a great player like Robertson for him, let's do it. So it's sort of that kind of division. I am leaning more toward the idea that for the right price, I would be willing. And I think Robertson for Dobson may be a win-win for both teams. But whether or not new GM Matthew Darsh is going to go along with that remains to be seen. I needed to ask you this. Does the coaching change in Dallas make it more likely that Robertson would stay because maybe there was some tension with Peter DeBoer?
Yeah, I would think it would, just because it feels like directions are probably leading to the Stars making an internal hire. And I could be completely wrong on that. They may go out and find somebody from the outside, but Jim Nill wants to keep a lot of the assistant coaches on board, and that could be a potential candidate. Or if Neil Graham gets promoted from the AHL, then it would be nice for him to have a guy like Robertson that's a proven goal scorer as a first year head coach. So I think that the coaching change probably does lend to Dallas wanting to keep Robo. And I still find it a bit baffling that he's maybe being shopped, and maybe this is just reports and it's just smoke, but sometimes smoke leads you to fire. So it's rather curious to hear what teams may be interested and what the package is. And it's really interesting the notes you have on Dobson in a lot of ways. But if he is a defensive liability, I think I would take my crack at it. If you're Dallas, if you really feel the need to get rid of Robo, wouldn't you take a crack at it? I'd rather take a crack at a 25-year-old Dobson than signing Labushkin and Dumba for a combined $7 million like you did a year ago. Maybe you get him around a better situation environment. Maybe it'll work out. I guess if I may ask about Callum Ritchie a bit, maybe just a young forward that could potentially, maybe he's thrown into the deal. Is there maybe a young forward on New York that's a bit cheaper that Dallas would like to maybe have thrown into a package that includes Robo, just because Dallas is going to need some cheaper talent maybe on their depth?
Yeah, I tend to doubt the Islanders would want to part with Ritchie. The problem the Islanders have had, Lou Lamoriello traded away 4 consecutive first-round draft picks. So the cupboard is fairly bare, and they just acquired Ritchie in the Brock Nelson deal at the trade deadline. he's going to be either their number 2 or number 3 center this year. That's depending on how well he does in training camp. I don't think the Islanders are going to be all that eager to part with him. Young forwards is a problem with the Islanders.
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to address by getting Robo.
Exactly. So I wanted to ask you a little bit. I looked at the numbers, and the numbers on the power play for Robertson look really good. Tell me what he adds to a power play, because the Islanders power play 31st in the league this past year.
Well, he has a shoot first mentality, and I think that has really suited him in Dallas in a lot of ways, since Miro Heiskanen is really not that if he's quarterbacking the number 1 power play unit. But we did see when Harley took over during Miro's absence with an injury, Harley has a bit more aggressive of a style in terms of how he quarterbacks the power play, which actually lends to, I think, better looks for Jason Robertson. He loves to hang out around that right circle. That's sort of his office, so to speak. And he just likes to fire pucks on net. He's very liberal with the shooting, which I think lends to him picking up production, picking up points, just because he's not afraid to shoot it. He can shoot from weird angles. You hear all the time, like the reports about, like, he practices scoring goals from all different kinds of weird angles, like behind the net. Like, he practices those sort of things. And then you see that pop up. And I think he's had a few kind of curious goals against the Islanders in his career as well, because he practices those things from behind the net, behind the goal line, just like working on those type of things. And I think that suits him on the power play. But he gives you a go-to option. Like, the power play for Dallas has run through Robo since he's been called up. It changed when Mikko Rantanen came to town a bit, and Mikko kind of took over that part. And I think that's another factor, another part of the conversation is with Mikko Rantanen. Well, you're paying him $12 billion. It's going to be hard to keep Robo. I think you can if you're able to trade off some players like Lyubushkin and Dumba, but that's going to be hard to do. And I think that's another factor that plays into Dallas maybe shopping Robo, because, well, you're already paying an elite goal scorer, just elite player in the NHL, and Rantanen $12 million. Can you afford Robo at 10, half, 11, whatever he wants? I think that's a difficult conversation or a difficult task that Jim Nill has.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the cap is going to affect both teams as far as trying to make this deal. But when you're talking about, a right shot defenseman that can put up 70 points and a guy who has scored over 100 points in a season and had 140 goal season, you figure those things out.
Yes, no, exactly. You figure it out, and I think that's what all teams do at this era, right? With the salary cap, you just have to figure it out, and good teams do as well. They can bend the rules, it feels like, to their favor. But rather intriguing stuff, Gil. I appreciate you hopping on for a bit, just because it feels like Robertson is just picking up more and more steam as the days go on, and maybe it's a potential suitor down the line. And maybe some of the stuff we talked about ends up coming to light here, maybe in a few weeks or so.
We shall see. Going to be interesting. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So, first of all, thanks to Joey Erickson for talking a little bit more about the Robertson potential trade. And I think there is a potential match here if the Islanders are willing to part with Noah Dobson. We'll see how that all ends up playing out. Again, these are not easy trades to make, but I will say this. If you think Matthew Darsh wants to make a big splash right away, bringing in Jason Robertson and trading out Noah Dobson, that certainly would fit the bill and certainly give the Islanders some of the help on the power play and some of the goal scoring. I mean, the thing that struck me most about what Joey said is the shoot first mentality. Everydayers, I don't have to tell you how often over the last couple of years on this show, we have discussed the fact that the Islanders need more players who are shoot first guys. We were hoping Oliver Wahlstrom could possibly fill a role like that, but he never really panned out. Ultimately, the Islanders' best players, most of them, many of them, are pass first guys. Mathew Barzal, obviously, topping that list. Simon Holmstrom, to an extent, fits that bill. They could use a guy who, A, is very good on the power play, sets up at the right circle, and B, has a shoot first mentality. I could just see some incredible chemistry between Mathew Barzal and Robertson, or even if you want to do all three of, Barzal, Horvat, and Robertson, these are possibilities, but again, got to pull that trade off, and it is not going to be easy. You'll be able to fit them under the cap this year, but how you fit them under the cap after that is obviously a big question, and the Islanders kind of need to try to figure that situation out. Meanwhile, if you are going to acquire Robertson, you certainly would need to draft Schaefer. I think, you moving on kind of from Noah Dobson, he's your number one defenseman. To me, it would make signing Schaefer and probably re-signing Tony DeAngelo more of an imperative, let's say, for the New York Islanders. And meanwhile, just to wrap up a couple of thoughts from the Combine, I like the way that Matthew Schaefer has handled himself at the Combine. And it's been very impressive. He talked, there are things about him that make him mature beyond his years. Losing his mother at the age of 16, his billet mom, the woman who was housing him in juniors, lost her as well. I think that gives him a certain perspective that not a lot of 17, 18-year-old kids have. And, that is obviously a plus. The other thing is that there are things that he still comes across very much as a teenager. And, like he got to meet before Game 3 members of both the Panthers and the Oilers, and hearing him just talk about how cool it was and amazing. Yeah, there's part of him that is still a kid in a candy store when he's there talking about, what it's like to meet Leon Draisaitl and to meet Connor McDavid and all these guys, Brad Marchand. It was really, really interesting to hear him talk about that. But the other thing that was interesting was to hear him talk about the Islanders organization in a very positive light. And that was very encouraging because you heard, and again, this is all kind of secondhand stuff, right? Where the roommate of Michael Misa said that Misa wanted to join the San Jose Sharks organization. And, you sort of think, oh, okay, maybe that's sending a little bit of a message, or maybe the roommate is just relaying a conversation. At no point was there, oh, yeah, he doesn't want to play for the New York Islanders. I don't think that was ever an issue. But at the same time, Schaefer went out of his way to say how much he liked talking to the New York Islanders, how he heard so many good things about the organization. Overall, it was just an encouraging quote to hear him talking positively about the New York Islanders organization. And it looks more and more like that rumor that the Islanders had him pay for dinner is just that. It is a rumor that does not have necessarily any basis in fact. But realistically, as we speak, you sort of have to figure that Schaefer realizes that he very likely could be picked by the New York Islanders, and I think he's more than okay with that. Believe me, even if Michael Misa genuinely does prefer to go to San Jose as opposed to being on the island, if the Islanders were to pick him first overall, very little doubt in my mind that he would be excited to join the New York Islanders. And we'll see how that all plays out. But it is going to be interesting to see what happens. But good news is that Matthew Schaefer, speaking highly of the Islanders organization, of Matthew Darsh, and that he's heard good things about this hockey team, that in and of itself is an encouraging fact. All right, we have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We will continue our player-by-player look. In fact, we will conclude our player-by-player look with Grant Hutton. We'll talk about his season, both in Bridgeport and with the big club, and what his future, if any, is with the Islanders. We'll also have our Islanders birthday of the day. Let's see if you can guess who this center is. He was with the Islanders twice in 91-92 and briefly in 96-97. So we've got all that and a lot more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. We continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders, and this is the last one right now, but we're going to talk a little bit about Grant Hutton. And Hutton, he's one of those guys who is an AHL veteran, native of Carmel, Indiana, good size, 6'3", 210. He has played at least some games for the Islanders in 3 of the last 4 seasons. He played 16 games in 2021-2022, 2 games in 2023-2024, and 13 games last year. He was a +1, had 2 assists and 4 penalty minutes in those games. Did not see a lot of ice time for a defenseman to average only 13 minutes and 28 seconds a game. Not particularly high there. Clearly, the Islanders view him as a fill-in, as somebody who's going to come in. If somebody gets hurt, you bring him up for 2, 3, 5 games, whatever the case may be. He plays, an acceptable level of hockey. He's a right shot defenseman. Those are not easy to come by. And, you get your minutes from him enough to allow other players to, rest enough to play effectively, and you move on. I mean, in 13 games, 12 block shots, 13 hits, 10 shots on goal. Here is a guy who really is a quality fill-in guy. And he's not a prospect. I mean, he's 29 years old. He's going to turn 30 in July. he is what he is. Grant Hutton is not going to be the next Dennis Potvin or Bobby Orr, and that's no offense to Grant Hutton. He's a quality AHL player who can help you out at the NHL level. At Bridgeport, 29 games, 5 assists, 31 penalty minutes, and a -9. In Bridgeport, again, he's steady. He's got the size. He's got the experience. He is, however, and this is something that Islander fans should take note of, he is, at the present time, an unrestricted free agent. So will Matthew Darsh and whoever's running Bridgeport, whether it's Chris Lamorello or somebody else, we hope, will they re-sign Grant Hutton at this point? You need those veteran leaders down at Bridgeport. You certainly need that. Whether or not he fits the bill again or whether they're going to look for change remains to be seen. If he stays with the Islanders organization, I think it's pretty clear that his role is going to more or less be the same. He will most likely start the season in the AHL. If you need a right shot defenseman to come up and play a few games, if somebody gets hurt, even if it's to be, the 7th or 8th defenseman, if someone gets hurt, he's reliable enough that you can call him up. But at this stage, it appears clear that the Islanders, the fact that Patrick Waugh and Lou at the time went out and brought in Perunovic, Boqvist, and DeAngelo when all those injuries hit, and then ended up sending Grant Hutton eventually back to Bridgeport, tells you they trust him in the short term, but limited, not in the long run at the NHL level. I would welcome him back, but again, the role is going to be the same if indeed he is welcomed back by the Islanders. And again, you're talking about a 1-year, 2-year deal, probably a 2-way deal for Grant Hutton, where, yeah, he'll get paid a little more if he ends up going to the island for a few games, but he'll have a base salary if he's down at Bridgeport. So we've gone through the entire Islanders roster pretty much. It took 4 weeks. Not going to discuss in depth Jakub Skarek. He's no longer with the team. Didn't do Brock Nelson or Dennis Chalowski because they are no longer with the team. But we've gone through the roster. And if you missed anybody, we got like 4 weeks practically of players, maybe 4.5 weeks, where our third segment is a different Islanders player. We grade their season, talk about the ups and downs, what their role was, and what their future, if any, with the team looks like. And your comments always welcome, depending on who it is we're talking about. Always great to talk Islanders hockey with any of you. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And, we got to go back a couple of days. Monday was the 58th birthday of former Islanders center Dave McElwain. McElwain, a 9th-round pick of the Penguins back in 1986, made his NHL debut in 87-88 for Pittsburgh, went on to play for Winnipeg, and then joined the Islanders during the 91-92 season. Played 54 games for the Islanders that year, 8 goals, 23 points, 28 penalty minutes, and a -8. Then was dealt to Buffalo, played for Toronto, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, had a brief 4-game stint with the Islanders in 96-97, added another goal and an assist, and then went on to finish his career in Switzerland and Germany. Played in 501 NHL games, scored 100 goals exactly in the NHL, 207 points, 292 penalty minutes, add 2 assists in 20 playoff games, none of those with the Islanders. He is more of a checking 2-way kind of a forward, bottom 6 kind of a guy, but reliable in that role, which is why he managed to put together the lengthy career that he had. One of his better games with the Islanders, January 4th, 1992, Islanders hosting the Quebec Nordique at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Ron Tugnut, the starter for Quebec. Steve Weeks is the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Dave McElwain, he scores in the late second period. In fact, with 13 seconds left in the period, it's his 7th goal of the year. It's a shorty. Bill Berg gets the only assist. That puts the Islanders up by a score of 3-0. And then in the third period, on the power play, McElwain and David Volek help set up Ubi McDonough for a goal that clinches the win. Islanders go on to win 5-2 over the Nordique. Steve Weeks, 35 saves. But for Dave McElwain, a goal and an assist. That's a 2-point night. He's a +1. He scores on his only shot. It was a shorthanded shot, and it was the game-winning goal. So Dave McElwain is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout this critical off season, and it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about a possible late first round or second round pick that the Islanders were looking at the at the draft combine. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings as well. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.